The day I buried my husband, Robert, was the day my son, Michael, drove me down a lonely road. I never expected it to end like this. I was still in my funeral black, my eyes swollen from tears that seemed endless, my body drained from months of watching cancer slowly take the man I had loved for over 40 years. All I wanted was to go home, to grieve in peace. But Michael had other plans. He pulled off the road onto a dirt path I hadn't seen in years, the same stretch where Robert and I used to hunt together. I thought he was just taking me somewhere quiet to talk, but instead, he turned to me, his face cold and unreadable, and said, "Get out." I stared at him, struggling to understand. The boy I raised, the child I worked so hard to give everything to. Who was this? "Michael, what's going on?" My voice shook. He didn't even look at me. He opened the door, and with a glance, it was clear. This was no longer my son. Something inside me twisted. I said, "Get out." What did he mean? What had happened to the son I knew? I stepped out of the car, the cold autumn wind biting at my skin. He walked around, and that's when he threw it at my feet. An envelope. "Open it," he ordered. My hands trembled as I tore it open, only to find Robert's will. I stood there, frozen. The house, the life insurance, everything we had built together, all of it, everything, went to me, not a dime for him. I couldn't breathe. "You poisoned him against me," he spat. His words cut through the air like a blade. "You made him think I only wanted the money." How could I even begin to explain? This wasn't the boy I raised. "You've got to be kidding," I whispered. But Michael wasn't laughing. His face twisted with anger and desperation as he confessed how deep in debt he was. $300,000 to be exact. The creditors, the ones who'd followed me around at the funeral, he had promised them the inheritance, everything he thought was rightfully his. "You took it all," he said, voice breaking. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't about love. It was never about love. As I stood there, my heart shattered. I knew I had to face something I couldn't ignore. But before I could speak, he said the words that would change everything. "You're going to disappear." If you want to hear the rest of this story, don't forget to subscribe. I had always thought that the hardest thing I would ever face was losing Robert. But the moment Michael told me to get out of the car, I realized I was wrong. Robert and I had been through so much together, 4 decades of life, love, and hardship. We had built everything from the ground up. But raising Michael, well, that was always the hardest job I'd ever had. I did it alone for years, working double shifts after Robert walked out, struggling to make ends meet. When Robert finally came back, it was like we were trying to fix something that couldn't be fixed. But we did our best. I worked extra, hours. Sold everything I could just to send Michael to college, to give him the life I never had. I gave him everything. And now, here we were, standing at the end of it all after burying Robert, and Michael, my own son, was asking me to get out of the car. "Get out, Mom," he said, his voice flat, cold, completely unfamiliar. I couldn't comprehend it. This wasn't the same boy who'd clung to my side as a child, the one who would crawl into bed with me during thunderstorms. "What's going on, Michael?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. But he didn't look at me. He didn't even blink as he reached across the seat, opening the door. I said, "Get out." His words hit me like a punch, and for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize my own child. I stumbled out of the car, feeling the weight of his anger and frustration crash down on me. He had always been my baby, and now this stranger was demanding that I leave. The wind hit me hard as I stood in the gravel, the chill of autumn biting into my thin dress. I looked at him, searching for the son I knew, but he just stared at me. Nothing but resentment in his eyes. "Michael, why are you doing this?" I asked, my voice trembling. But he didn't answer. Instead, he tossed something at my feet. An envelope. "Open it," he ordered. And in that moment, I realized everything had changed. I hesitated for a moment, standing there in the dust, staring down at the envelope Michael had thrown at my feet. When I opened it, my hands shaking, I couldn't process what I was seeing. The will, Robert's will, the house, the savings, everything we had worked so hard for, it was all left to me. Not a single thing for Michael. My breath caught in my throat, and I looked up at him, trying to understand. But he wasn't looking at me with sadness or confusion. No, he was seething with anger, his face twisted, his eyes wild. "You poisoned him against me," he spat, the words cutting through the air like knives. I could see it now, the raw bitterness, the hatred that had been simmering beneath the surface for so long. I wanted to speak, to comfort him, but the words wouldn't come. He wasn't my son anymore. "Michael, this isn't—" I started, but he cut me off, his voice louder, more desperate. "I have $300,000 in gambling debts, Mom. Did you see them at the funeral? The creditors standing in the back? They gave me until tomorrow, and now you took it all." The shock hit me like a punch. I knew Michael had struggled, but this was worse than I could have ever imagined. He wasn't angry because of the will. He was angry because he had lost his lifeline, his last hope. "You promised them everything, Michael," I said, my voice trembling. He wasn't even looking at me anymore. His face was pale, his eyes unfocused, as if he were seeing something far beyond me. "They were counting on me," he muttered, almost to himself. "They promised me everything would be okay. But you took it all." I wanted to tell him that this wasn't the way, that there were other options, other ways out. But I knew. Deep down, I knew it wasn't about the money. It was about something else. The weight of it, the desperation was too much. This wasn't my son anymore. This was a man who was drowning, and I was standing on the shore, helpless to save him. "Michael, please," I whispered, but he didn't hear me. Or maybe he did, but it didn't matter anymore. Michael took a step back, his expression hardening as he outlined what he had planned. "You're going to disappear, Mom," he said flatly, the words so cold they felt like ice against my skin. "Grief-stricken widow, wandering off. Maybe they'll find you, maybe they won't. But by then, it'll be too late. I'll contest the will, claim you weren't of sound mind when you signed it. The courts will give it to me. I'm the only family left." My heart dropped. The son I raised, taught right from wrong, sacrificed for, was telling me he was going to erase me, not with a gun, but with a few words, a claim to the courts. It didn't make sense. This couldn't be real. He was my child. I had given everything for him. "Michael, no," I whispered, but my voice faltered as I looked at him. This wasn't just a betrayal. This was a cruelty I couldn't fathom. He stepped away, his back turned to me, already thinking about the next step in his plan. In that moment, something inside me snapped. My hands, trembling from the cold, instinctively reached for something, anything that would protect me. I spotted it in the trunk. The old hunting rifle Robert had kept for years, the one he'd always said would protect us. I knew how to use it. My fingers fumbled with the barrel, my mind racing. "Stay back," I shouted, the desperation in my voice now matching his. Michael froze, his face contorted with a mix of confusion and disbelief. "Don't be stupid, Mom," he said, trying to stay calm, but I saw the fear creeping into his eyes. "Michael, I won't let you do this," I said, my voice shaking but firm. I wasn't going to let him strip me of everything, not my life, not my dignity. I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. The rifle felt heavy in my hands, but there was no going back. In that moment, I wasn't just fighting for myself. I was fighting for the woman I used to be, the mother I had tried so hard to be. "Stay back," I repeated, my voice louder, a warning. Michael took another step back, his face twisted with frustration and something darker I couldn't quite place. "You're not going to do this, Mom," he said, trying to sound calm, like he still had control over the situation. "Put the rifle down." But I didn't move. I couldn't. He kept talking, but each word only made the distance between us wider. "How long have you been planning this?" I asked, my voice trembling but strong. My finger still steady on the trigger. I couldn't stop myself. "Since Dad got sick?" The question hung in the air between us like a heavy, suffocating fog. His expression faltered for a second before he snapped back, his voice harsh. "Don't make this about him," he spat, his hands shaking. "You think I wanted this? You think I wanted to be like this? You made me like this." He was shouting now, his anger boiling over. My heart pounded as I fought the urge to collapse into a heap of tears. How did we get here? How did this happen to my son, the one I raised with love and sacrifice? The weight of it all, the broken trust, the years of trying to be the best mother I could, none of it seemed to matter now. My hands shook harder as I fought to hold it together, but the truth hit me harder than anything. This wasn't just about the money. This was about his anger, his failure, and the choices he had made. "I gave you everything, Michael, everything." I screamed, the words breaking free before I could stop them. My throat burned with emotion. "I sacrificed everything for you, and this is how you repay me?" My vision blurred with tears, but I didn't let the rifle drop. I couldn't. The rifle was all I had left. It was the only thing keeping me from losing everything. Michael stood there, his face red with rage, but something changed in his eyes. A crack, a brief moment of vulnerability flickered across his face. I wanted to believe he still loved me, that he was still the boy I raised. But the truth was clear now. "Michael, this isn't you," I whispered, but he didn't answer. The sound of my heartbeat drowned out everything else as I faced the impossible choice. Do I let go and walk away, or do I pull the trigger and end this nightmare once and for all? The tension between us reached its peak, and I knew the next moment would define everything. The sound of sirens in the distance cut through the tension like a blade. My heart pounded in my chest, the weight of the rifle still heavy in my hands. Michael heard them too. His face, which had been a mask of anger and defiance, faltered for the briefest moment. His phone rang. The ringtone was sharp, intrusive. He grabbed it, his fingers shaking, and I saw something shift in him, fear, desperation. "Please, just one more day," he pleaded, his tough facade cracking for the first time. His voice broke, and I almost didn't recognize it. "Please, Mom, I swear I'll fix it. Just one more day." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My son, the same boy who had just threatened me, was now pleading for more time from the very woman he had been willing to abandon. His shoulders slumped as he spoke, and I could see it, the weight of his world crashing down around him. The realization hit him like a punch, and his eyes locked onto mine, hollow with regret. But I wasn't ready to give him the mercy he seemed to be begging for. "Your father knew," I said, softly, but the words carried a weight that made him freeze. "He changed the will 6 months ago." Michael's eyes widened, his breath caught in his throat. "What?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper as if he didn't want to hear the answer. "He knew about your debts, about everything. He changed everything to protect me." I watched as Michael staggered back, his face draining of color. He looked like he had just been struck by a blow he didn't see coming. "He knew," he whispered again, his voice breaking. His knees buckled and he sank to the ground, unable to stand anymore. The tough exterior had shattered, leaving behind the boy I once knew, the boy who never asked for help, the boy who had always been too proud. But now he was nothing but a broken man, crumbling under the weight of his own choices. My heart ached for him, but I couldn't find it in me to forgive him. Not yet. The sirens grew louder, closer. The moment of reckoning was here. The sirens grew louder, closer, and I could feel my heartbeat in my ears. Michael didn't move. He didn't run. He just sat there, crumpled in the dirt, his face buried in his hands as his shoulders heaved with sobs. I stood frozen, the rifle still in my hands, my grip tight but unsteady. I wanted to feel relief, but all I could feel was the weight of everything that had just happened. Michael wasn't the man I thought I knew anymore. The boy I raised, the son I sacrificed so much for, was gone. In his place was someone who had betrayed me beyond repair. The police arrived just in time, their vehicles pulling up with a screech of tires. They were out of their cars in an instant, shouting commands, surrounding us. Michael didn't resist. He didn't even try to argue. He just sat there, his face red and tear-streaked, too broken to fight. As they handcuffed him, he looked at me one last time, his eyes full of regret. "I'm sorry, Mom," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." But it was too late for apologies. The weight of his actions had already shattered everything. I watched them lead him away, and for the first time in so long, I felt completely empty. I buried Robert today, but I also buried the son I once knew, the one who had promised me he would always take care of me, the one I'd worked so hard for. As the police car drove away, I stood there in the quiet, the cold wind biting into my skin, and realized that the hardest part of this was not losing Robert. It was losing Michael. As I drove away from the scene, I felt the weight of everything that had just happened settle in my chest. The sirens were fading in the distance, and I was alone, the car filled with nothing but silence. I had lost so much. Robert, my husband of 40 years, and now Michael, my son. The tears didn't come, though. Not this time. I'd cried enough. For the first time, I realized something. I wasn't just a widow. I wasn't just a woman who had been torn apart by the people she loved. I was a woman who had learned to stand up for herself, no matter the cost. That realization hit me harder than anything. As I drove home, I thought about all the years I spent trying to protect everyone, trying to make everything right. But in the end, all I had to do was protect myself. The house would be empty when I got home, but for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I locked every door, set every alarm, and crawled into bed, pulling the covers around me like a shield. I slept through the night for the first time in 18 months, because I was finally free. Michael's future was uncertain. What would happen to him, I didn't know, but that wasn't my burden to carry anymore. I had learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes loving someone means letting them go. If you're following my story, please don't forget to subscribe and let me know where you're watching from.